Hello everyone, Treecks here, and welcome to the F-Zero X expansion kit coverage of the course edit mode. Of course, this is the thing I'm going to cover. I was talking about doing something else in between Grand Prix Race Standard and Grand Prix Race Expert, and indeed, this is going to be it. The most important of all of the additions the F-Zero X expansion kit actually gave is the ability to create your own courses in this game. Nintendo actually provides the very same tools they also used in order to create all of the tracks in this game, only this time you can actually tinker around with it. And that is basically what this is. Just remember, every single course in this game has also been made with the tools provided in the course edit. So you can technically even recreate all of the tracks in this game, or you can make some additions to existing tracks. But of course, the most fun way to actually play around with this mode is to create your own course. Let your inspiration be your guide. And this episode is going to be used in order to explain how it works. Now, this is actually the layout we get. As you can see, we have a blank sheet. This is basically the world where the track is going to be placed, but currently we have nothing. We can actually put on the guidance so we can get some messages over all of the buttons in order to help us. As you can see over here. The moment we start selecting something, we get a little bit of an explanation of how it works. Makes it a little bit easier to follow, I think. So let's start off by covering the options. We have an option to put point details on or off. Of course, them being on is way easier. We have some background music that plays here. You can also decide to actually leave that off. But I think it actually helps with the general atmosphere, so I'll put it on. And the same applies to the sound effects. We can also decide how fast our cursor moves. Make it go fast over the map or very slow. But I think middle of the road is actually fine enough when tinkering around in this mode. So those are all the options we get. And now it's time to actually start creating a course. How does it actually work? The game makes use of a point system. And with points in this case, I don't mean points you get after winning a race, but actually points on a map. We can actually push the A button in order to place points on the map. It works like this. And the moment you have enough points, which are also spaced far away enough from each other, the game will automatically create a track in between all of those points, as you can see. That actually always works automatically. So in order to create the shape you want in the track you have in mind, you basically need to work with the points and put them in the correct position so the track actually does what you want to do. That's pretty much the point system all of the tracks make use of. And this is also something I could cover. As you can see, you also have the option to draw the course as a line. Just like it looked the moment we didn't have enough points in order to create this track. This way the game actually does not have to load as much. And therefore, if the track does not have to load, you can actually make this program run faster. That's basically the reason why you would want to do that. And the other option over here, this is basically the most important one. This is the option to test drive your course. Everything you've created, of course, only functions the moment you have tested it out first. The track is useless if you're not able to complete it, or if it's not really what you had in mind. This of course being pretty basic, because I just put a couple of random points here and there. But it does show off how it works. That's the whole reason why this episode is a thing. Actually creating something, my own real tracks you might say, that is something for later. But alright, in order to create a better track, where the track actually looks a lot smoother, we are going to want to move the points around, of course. As you can see over here, this finish line is not really straight, and therefore we need to straighten it out. And that we can do in the create mode, where we can actually move a point in lateral or in vertical position. Let's start off with the lateral in order to keep things simple. Let's put this point on par with the other point. As you can see, the track will still make a curve, and that's because the point after that is still in the curve. And therefore the track also wants to make that curve. In order to solve that, we are going to want to set a different point by selecting this point. And if we then put in a new point, it will actually be a point in between those other points. Remember that. If you actually want to input points in the middle of the track, you actually need to select the point before that, and then you can set a new point. So this way we've actually straightened out our start finish. Now let's go talk about how to move a point vertically. Like I said, that is also an option. For that you're going to want to select this option, and then you can actually select the point with Z and then move it up or down, giving it vertical adjustment. As you may remember, with the exception of a few tracks, pretty much all of the tracks in this game are not flat, so you can also play around with the height of a track. Something like this. As you can see, the track has moved up a little bit at the points where vertical adjustment has been made. Let's go see how that looks in practice. Yeah, we're starting to go up, as you can see. More and more. Up to this point, where all of the other points were still at height 0. So we drop again. That is how you create height in your track. Also, pretty basic, of course. But of course, we have more options. As you may know, the track isn't always the same width and bank. Of course, that you can also adjust. Let's go look for a different point, so we can actually play around with that. The width actually determines how broad the track is. Both the left and right of the track can actually be adjusted to something very narrow, as you can see over here. This is the minimum it can be. But of course the exact opposite is also possible. You can also make it very wide. Whatever you think suits best for your inspiration. I'll just put it at 10 on each side. And this one I'll make even smaller. Oh, of course, need to do it like that. Sometimes I think I need to push the start button in order to do a test run. Start button is just a hint screen. But here, as you can see, the width of the track has been adjusted. And that is how that option works. Next one in line, the bank of the track. We've seen plenty of tracks in-game with loopings and corkscrews, somersaults, banking curves. Of course, we can also create those. For that, we actually need to make use of this option. As you can see, we can give the track any bank between 0 and 360 degrees. Of course, be careful not to make them too steep, because otherwise the track is going to do weird stuff. Perhaps more on that later. Let's make a little bit of a curve on this track. Oh yeah, as you can see over here. This does not really work out because of the 180 degrees this point is in and the next one being at 0. That is too big of a curve for the game to make. So you get this error. This actually does not really function, so we need to adjust the angle of this point as well. So the game can actually work with that. Remember, whenever points are close enough together, don't make the difference in bank too great, otherwise the track is going to do weird things. Sometimes even giving things that don't even work. But this should work. So let's go see how our bank looks. Here's the narrow section, and yeah, here we start doing a corkscrew. Indeed what I was going for. Starting off with a point going 270 degrees, then fully upside down, 180 degrees, and ending with a point with 90 degrees, and then returning to 0. Creating a perfect corkscrew. Pretty tricky to play around with, so for this you actually need to make sure you do it correctly. Otherwise you get weird stuff. Oh, speaking of weird stuff, let's move on to the next. Here we can actually shift the track's center point. This is actually related to the width of the track. Because as you might have seen, whenever we start playing around with the width of the track, all we can do is actually adjust the track on both sides the same number. But whenever we actually play around with the center point, then we can actually adjust whether the left or right side actually has to be broader than the other side. Allow me to show you off how that works. If we start shifting the center point, the track will remain as broad as it was. However, it will actually shift left or right. And there's actually a lot of interesting stuff you can create with this. It looks pretty basic, but trust me. Just wait until my own tracks get covered in the extra content. And you will see there's actually a couple of funny things you can do with this. Next option is a pretty simple one. Clear selected points. If one of the points you've placed does not really work out for you, or you simply want to do something else, this way you can delete them. Let's try doing it with this one. Select clear, and then if you select a point, as you can see, it'll be gone. And the final option is actually the straighten option, whenever the course is not really straightened out because of the points being too close together or making a curve that is actually too tricky for the game to make, you can always select this option so the game will auto-correct the course. Does not always work. Of course, if your track is too messy, this is also not able to help you. But whenever you're in a jam, you can always try to use this option. Let's move on. That was actually everything in the point mode, so let's move on to design mode. Let's create a little bit of a longer track, because there's actually a couple of options I'd like to cover, and I don't think I have enough track in order to do so. So let's make it a little bit bigger. Create some extra points here. Okay, one more. But now the track is going to make a very weird curve because of this point being here, so let's correct that by deleting this point. There we go. That looks a lot better. So, now that we've created a little bit of room, let's go play around with the design mode. If the layout of the track is actually satisfactory to you, now it's actually time to design everything. From basic road up to complicated stuff like billboards and cylinders and stuff like that. First, let's talk about the most basic one, the road. If you take a look at the road over here, you will see it is one smooth type of road. It all looks the same. Some people actually like it that way, but other people will actually agree on the fact that the road looks better if you can actually see where all of the points are separated. And therefore, you can actually change around which type of road you want. Every single venue actually has 5 types of regular road to select. The Mute City one, for instance, actually has a darker type of asphalt whenever you go for the second option. And if we try to select them like this, actually leaving one point regular and then the next one creating darker asphalt, you can actually create this. Just like the regular game also does it. After every single point getting a different type of road. And therefore you're actually being able to see during racing where all of your points are separated. Also pretty interesting. And I love the fact how the game itself actually also does that. That's the reason why I actually know about this. But as you can see, there's 5 types of roads for each venue. So you can play around with that all you like. But now let's go talk about different kinds of roads. After playing through this game multiple times, we know regular road is not all the types of roads we have. We also have high roads, or walls, I always call them. Whenever we select those, you can actually create these kind of tracks where there's higher walls. You've seen plenty of them during the Grand Prix racing. This way we can actually create them, and these of course also have multiple types. These are not dependent on the venue, unlike the regular road. These are always the same on every type of venue. And the same applies to the rest of the... Oh yeah, this is also good to know. Special types of roads can never be adjacent to each other. There always has to be a part regular road in between, as you can see over here. After the high road, I was not able to actually create a tunnel, but the point after that, there I can actually create a tunnel. Let's give this one a different color, so we can actually see how that looks. Let's go test it out. Now we have created different segments of roads, so we can actually see where all of our points end and begin. The next new addition is the high road. As you can see over here, the higher walls. Also look awesome in a corkscrew. And then the tunnel. Also a special type of road. And remember, different kinds of special types of roads you can never put together. It always has to be a regular point in between. Don't know why, it just does. And that is a rule in an F-Zero X track. Now, let's go play around with some other things. Let's make this one a little bit broader. Yeah. And you too. There we go. 2 more. 26. 26 is the default width of the track, by the way, in case you didn't know. But the reason why I'm doing this is because I'd like to create a pipe this time around. Just select pipe in the design style and then select a point by pressing C, like always, and then A in order to change that segment into a pipe segment. And there we go. We have created ourselves a pipe. that works like this. Oh yeah, of course, because of the high wall, we can't go any further. Like I said, special types of tracks can't be connected. But we can actually give the pipe a different color. And let's see how it looks. Ooh, we have a pipe. Awesome. So, that is how that works. Of course, whenever creating a half pipe or cylinder, that works exactly the same. So there's nothing too special about that. However, do remember, as you can see over here, special types of tracks can never be connected. So if you want to change a special type of track into a different one, we first want to return everything to normal, create a regular track out of it again. So the game won't give us any errors. We're actually allowed to do so. That is pretty much how that works. Now that everything is regular track again, we can actually select cylinder or half pipe and then create, in this case, a cylinder like this. So whenever we're playing around with special types of tracks, do remember how it works. You can select any type of track in order to change it. Just keep in mind that you can never select two different types of special track and put them right beside each other. The final one being the half pipe. For these ones you actually need to be extra careful, because unlike cylinders and pipes, half pipes are actually a lot easier to fall out of. So whenever designing half pipes, always keep in mind that whatever you're trying to create actually has to be clearable. So this test drive option is always very important. Of course, you can also play around with the course edit to actually deliberately create something that is unclearable. But normally, you're actually trying to go for tracks you can clear, so and that won't be an option. Oh, oops. Yeah, if you double press Z, then you'll actually select a point with the cursor. But that does not matter, we can still continue. Now, let's go talk about the most complicated of all the special types of tracks, namely the empty space. If we select space option and then change a segment of the track in space, you will see it will become an empty gap. Of course, officially the track still exists, both of the points are still there. However, they do not function as a regular track anymore. In order to create gaps in your track, you're going to want to select a point and then leave that point empty by using the space option. But of course, if you want the track to be clearable, you also need to keep in mind this has to be altered. And there's actually multiple ways you can do it in a situation like this. First one actually being creating vertical altitude by moving the point upwards. Say for instance 60 points. And then, despite the track being an empty gap, we can actually still clear it, because now, because of the track being higher up, it has become a jump. However, of course, some testing is required in order to get it to a good point. Apparently 60 is a little bit too low. However, now that we know that it is too low, we can actually adjust the track a little bit, put it a little bit higher, get this other point a little bit closer, and now the jump should be clearable. It is all a matter of trial and error whenever creating a course. Yeah, as you can see, now this jump is clearable. Trial and error. However, that is not the only way to clear a gap. Now that we have seen all in the design mode, it is time to talk about the parts mode. Here we can actually select all the different types of stuff you can actually meet on the track, like pit areas for instance. Pit areas are traditionally always at the finish line, so if you want to create a pit area, we're going to want to try to select this segment of the track. The camera actually wants to cooperate. There we are. Select this part of the track, press A, and you will see this segment has become a pit area segment. And this actually applies to all of the things you can meet on the track, like the boost panels for instance. Dash plates work in a similar way. Select a part of the track. Let's go for this high wall section for instance. Select it by pressing Z, like this, and then press A, and you will see the middle of that segment now has a dash plate. But if you want it on a different position, you can actually select option 2, and it will get placed on the left side of the track. And that is how that works. Other options are dirt tracks. Remember, the dirt, it actually slows you down. This is a hindrance, but can also be placed on the track, like this. And of course, this you can also change up where you want to place it, in the middle, for instance. That is option 4. Now we have a dirt section in the middle. Next one, slip section. This is the ice that we meet on the track. Works precisely the same. However, let's still place one, because this way I can actually show off that the same segment can actually have multiple styles of parts. But if we select it again, and this time with an ice strip on the right, we can actually also place that over here. But do be careful for overlapping things. Next up, jump plates. These we've also seen in multiple tracks. And jump plates work a little bit differently, because unlike dash plates, these actually don't get placed in the middle of a segment. These will always get placed at the end of a segment. If we actually select this segment, for instance, because of the next one being an empty space, we can actually place a dash plate here. And therefore a way to jump. Now the track is not higher up anymore, so we can't make the jump anymore. But we can do it if we actually place a jump plate here. This way you can actually create awesome types of tracks. The only thing that limits you is your inspiration. This course edit is definitely a lot of fun to play around with, creating pretty much everything that can come to mind, as long as the game allows you to do it. Okay, where were we? Let's go make this pit area a little bit bigger. It can easily be reached. We know how it works by now. Move the point. So the finish becomes a little bit shorter, but the pit area actually becomes a little bit bigger. Do place the point in such a way that the finish line keeps looking great. Now let's continue, because we weren't done with the parts yet. We can skip the traps, that actually works the same as the dash plates. But we can talk about gates. Sometimes you will actually find gates on tracks. And this is actually also something you can place with the parts menu. Press A in order to place a gate at the beginning of that segment. There's multiple types of gates. Of course, there's multiple types of gates. The second one being the most interesting one, of course, because that's the gate for the start-finish. Select that. Always make sure to actually put that on the second point of your track, because that is actually the start and the finish of the race. Placing this somewhere else is of course allowed, but would just look weird. And the third option is actually the big canopy gate we've been seeing in a couple of tracks, like Mute City 3 for instance. Yeah, the camera can actually be very annoying to use sometimes. Makes use of the D-pad and the C buttons and the L and R buttons, if that was not obvious. So let's go take a look at our gates. This is actually the first one. Here's our finish gate. And here is our canopy gate. That is how the placing of gates work. All for the design of your track, so it actually looks nice. And speaking of looking nice, that is actually something I'd like to try to do with this one. Because of the way this gate works, as you can see, it actually clips through the track a little bit here on the top right. So let's try to remedy that by shifting this point a little bit. In such a way that the gate actually does not clip through the track. And in the meantime, let's continue placing some buildings on the track. In order to create extra life on your track, you can actually surround it by placing buildings at every single point. Or perhaps not every single point, but you know what I mean. For every single point you actually have the option to place buildings or rocks beside them. Let's select this one for instance. These are the golden buildings we see sometimes. Actually works like this. Or if you like rocks a little bit better, you can actually change them into rocks like this. That is all the stuff besides the track. But we can actually also place stuff on the track, like billboards. And that actually works with the option board. Select a point. Like this one for instance. And then we can actually place a billboard on the track. Oh, I selected the other point. Let's try that again. Z. You can actually see which point you've selected by the white line. That will then appear. And now we actually have a couple of billboards on the side of the track. And I'm afraid also a couple underneath this gate over here. There's multiple types of boards you can actually select, like these spinning ones for instance. These are also an option. All the things we've seen in the regular game, they are all here. Let's go see how it looks. Indeed, there's billboards underneath the gate. I'll clean that up later. We're not done with the coverage yet. The next thing is actually the background. Of course, we've been playing around on Mute City this whole time. But if you want a different type of venue, that you can select over here. Option BG, and then you can select Whiteland for instance, which is option 6. The track is still the same, however it is now in Whiteland instead of Mute City. And this whole time you guys were afraid you can only create tracks in this game in the Mute City venue. Of course you can actually select every type of venue in this game. And that works as follows. We can actually also select the time of day. Option 5 is actually nighttime, for instance. So now we have a starry sky and darkness. Or you like your evenings a little bit better, then go for option 7, which is dusk. On Firefield. Which is actually, if I need to be honest, my favorite type of track in this game. Firefield at dusk. So I think I'll keep it with this. But that is how changing around the background works. But of course we can also change around the background music. Every type of music is available. If you create a track that is actually in Firefield venue, you don't necessarily have to use the Firefield music, of course. Every type of track, including the ones from the expansion kit, can be used in order to place on the background of this track. And if it isn't obvious, Roller Coaster being my favorite one, so let's select that one. Option 12. And if we then start playing, we will hear Roller Coaster on the background. And that is how that works. And those are pretty much all of the options we have available to us. So let's do some quick cleaning. This gate over here actually does not really suit. So let's select the option clear and then select the point again and then the gate will be gone. And that is how that works. Every single style will actually also have an option clear in it. And now that we're done with the track, we can actually save it to the disk so we can actually use it. Oh, and don't mind all of these tracks that are already saved on the expansion kit. These are actually all of my tracks that I've created. They are currently named such a way that they actually don't give a spoiler alert. We'll be taking a look at those later. But this one we are going to save as the track called, very appropriate, let's call it Let's Play. Because it was made for the coverage of the Let's Play. So we know how the course edit actually works. But just saving it on the disk is actually not enough in order to play it. For that we need to use the option Use. And then we can actually select up to 6 tracks in order to use in the edit cup. Edit cup 1 is empty. So let's place Let's Play on that over there. And then we are actually able to play our just created course. Go into practice or time attack or whatever. And then select the edit cup. And you will see the track you've created and saved and placed will be ready to play. So Falcon, let's go see what kind of a track we ended up with. Creating your own track is awesome, but it is even more awesome to actually race on it. The whole reason why you're creating it in the first place. Let's see if we did not create that track on accident. No, it looks like computer players are able to make this jump. It's also something you play around with sometimes. Actually creating very difficult tracks. So difficult in fact that the computer players aren't always able to clear them. They are programmed in such a way that you can actually pretty much clear everything. They always follow the points on default. But it does not always mean that they can actually clear everything. But in this case it looks fine. It's a pretty basic track. Not very surprising. It was just a tutorial track in order to show off how the mode actually works. But indeed, this is how course edit actually works. And how you can actually play those courses. For that we have the edit cup. But more on that later, of course. I have one more thing to actually cover before we close off this episode. And that is actually the load option that we have in the course edit. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, all of the regular tracks in this game are also created with this course edit officially. And therefore, all of the tracks in the game can also be loaded into this course edit. Like Silence 3 for instance. If we select DD1-1, from the load option we can actually load in all of the existing tracks in this game. And therefore actually take a look at them, how they are actually built in this course edit. How Nintendo actually played around with this. Very awesome to actually take a look at. And of course you can also make some adjustments. If you think the track is awesome, however I have a couple of better ideas for them. you can select any point you want and create a couple of adjustments for the course. Even the existing tracks in the game you can actually load in and tinker around with. There's a lot of fun things you can actually do with them. In fact, if I need to be honest, a couple of my own created tracks are actually adjustments of existing tracks. Not giving away too much, but indeed, whenever I created my own set of courses, once again, which we are going to see in the extra content, there you will be able to see the courses I have created in the course edit. And indeed, there's a couple of tracks in there that are actually adjusted courses from the regular game. But more on that later. But anyway, after a long sit, over half an hour I see, we finally reach the end of the coverage of the course edit. We know how it works. And actually playing around with it, we are going to do later. And this was just tutorial. Next time we are going to continue with Grand Prix mode. Expert is up. Finally some challenge from the computer players, hopefully. Thank you all for watching. See you folks in the next episode. Treecks out.